Before you dive into this powerful tale of self-worth and liberation, ask yourself, what happens when a husband's cruel words push his wife to her breaking point? Can a public humiliation become the spark that ignites a woman's true strength? If you're ready to witness an inspiring transformation and a dramatic reclaim of dignity, then hit that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss another empowering story. And tell us in the comments, what city or country are you listening from? We'd love to know how far this story reaches. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. Mark walked into the house that night with the same cold, impassive look as always, as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, or at least that's what he liked to make others believe. Sarah, who was in the kitchen preparing dinner, heard the door slam shut and knew immediately that something bad was about to happen. In recent years, she had learned to recognize the signs, the dry tone in his voice, the heavy footsteps in the hallway, and above all, the suffocating silence that always preceded his angry outbursts. "Sarah!" he yelled from the living room, without even bothering to greet her or ask about the children, who were playing in their room. "Did you see this month's credit card statement? Is that what you call moderation?" She felt her heart race, and a wave of anxiety washed over her. She knew that whatever her answer, he would use it against her. With a kitchen towel in her hands, she hesitantly approached the living room, where Mark already held the bank statement with an expression of contempt. "I bought some clothes for the children, and I needed a few things for the house," she replied, trying to remain calm. Mark laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was a sound laden with sarcasm and mockery. "Things for the house? Is that what you tell me? You squander my money on useless things, and you still try to justify yourself." He took a step forward, raising the paper to her face. "Look at this. This cosmetics store. Do you still think some cream is going to fix the disaster time made of you?" Sarah felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Mark's words were cruel, cutting. She tried to defend herself, but her voice came out weak, almost inaudible. "I just wanted to take care of myself a little." "Take care of yourself? Please, Sarah, look at yourself. Do you think some dress or makeup is going to hide what you've become? After 2 children, you stopped being that woman I was proud to show off to the world. Now, when I see you, all I see is a shadow." He turned away, throwing the paper on the table. "That's why I decided to take Emily to the company event this Saturday. At least she knows how to present herself in public." Sarah stood frozen. What had he just said? His young secretary? The words resonated in her mind as she tried to process the blow. You can't be serious," she whispered, feeling her eyes fill with tears. Mark, relentless, shrugged as if it were no big deal. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and continued. "Of course I'm serious. Imagine what my colleagues would think if I showed up with you. They'd think you were my mother. Sarah, accept reality. You're not the same woman you used to be. And frankly, I have a reputation to maintain." The pain in Sarah's chest was unbearable. She didn't know whether to cry, scream, or simply disappear. Tears began to stream down her face, but Mark seemed completely indifferent. He finished his whiskey, looked at her with contempt, and left the room, leaving her alone in her pain. When he went upstairs, Sarah collapsed onto the sofa, unable to hold back her tears. She felt shattered, as if the weight of his words was more than she could bear. The public humiliation he planned for Saturday was the last straw, but at that moment, all she could do was sink into despair. The wall clock showed almost midnight when she finally stopped crying. She had a throbbing headache and swollen eyes, but something inside her began to change. A small voice, buried under years of abuse and humiliation, began to whisper, "You don't deserve this. You are more than this." Sarah woke up the next day with swollen eyes, a heavy head, and a nagging emptiness in her chest that she couldn't shake. The sunlight streamed through the bedroom curtains, but it didn't bring the relief she desperately needed. The space beside her in bed was cold and messy. Mark had woken up early, as always, and was probably already at the office, focused on everything but her and the children. The sound of children's laughter brought her back to the present. From the children's room, her two little ones, Tom and Lucy, played carelessly, oblivious to the emotional chaos that gripped their mother. Sarah sighed deeply, ran a hand over her face, and forced herself to get up. Even if her world was falling apart, it wasn't their fault. They needed their mom. She quickly looked in the bathroom mirror, and the reflection she saw echoed the same cruel words Mark had spoken the night before. "Look at yourself, Sarah. Do you think some dress or makeup is going to hide what you've become?" She closed her eyes tightly and clenched her fists, trying to ignore those words that now resonated like a constant echo in her mind. "You are more than this." She remembered that inner voice that had emerged in the early hours, but she still felt too weak to believe it. As she prepared breakfast for the children, the landline phone rang on the small kitchen table. Sarah looked at it, hesitating to answer. What if it was Mark? She wasn't ready for another confrontation. But when she saw the name of Anna, her best friend since high school, on the screen, something in her chest relaxed. With a trembling hand, she picked up the receiver. "Hello?" she replied, trying to keep her voice from betraying the lump in her throat. "Sarah, what's wrong? You sound terrible," Anna said on the other end of the line, with that direct yet warm tone that always characterized her. Sarah was silent for a few seconds, biting her lips to keep from bursting into tears again. But Anna, as always, knew her too well. "Mark again?" Anna asked. Almost as an affirmation, Sarah let out a shaky sigh. "I don't even know where to start, Anna," she finally admitted, her voice breaking. Anna listened patiently as Sarah tearfully recounted what had happened the night before. The contempt, the cruel words, the humiliation of knowing that Mark would take his young, perfect secretary to the company event. Sarah felt small, defeated, as if every bit of self-esteem she once had been pulverized by years of criticism and disparagement. "Sarah, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you," Anna interrupted when the narration ended, and Sarah fell silent, her breath catching. "Enough. You can't keep letting that man destroy you. You're not furniture in his house, or an ornament he no longer likes. You are an incredible woman. Do you hear me? Incredible. And you have to start believing it." "Anna, it's not that easy," Sarah replied, feeling the weight of her friend's words. Though deep down, she knew she was right. The idea of getting up after so many years of humiliation seemed a monumental task. Of course, it's not easy, but it's not impossible either. Think about yourself. Think about your children. What example are you setting for them if you let someone treat you like that? Sarah, you are not that shadow Mark wants you to believe you are. He has extinguished you, but there's still light inside you. You just have to turn it on. Anna's words resonated deeply with Sarah. She stared at the table in front of her, her gaze lost. She remembered the early years of her marriage, when she was a woman full of dreams and self-confidence. She remembered how she had left her career as an interior designer to dedicate herself to her family, convinced that she was making the best decision for everyone. But over the years, Mark had turned her life into an oppressive routine, always reminding her that she wasn't enough, didn't deserve more. "Sarah, are you still there?" Anna asked with concern. "Yes, I'm here," Sarah replied, though her voice still sounded weak. "Good, because this is what we're going to do. I want you to get up right now, look in the mirror, and tell yourself, I'm worth more than this. Then I want you to start thinking about yourself, about what you need, about what makes you happy." This Saturday, at that damn event Mark excluded you from, I want you to show him that he can't extinguish you, that you are still that strong, beautiful, and self-assured woman. Understood. Sarah was silent for a few seconds. There was something in Anna's words, something that made her feel a spark of hope, however small. "I'll try, Anna," she murmured, still insecure. "No, Sarah, you're not going to try. You're going to do it. And when you're done, you're going to realize that Mark has no power over you. You decide who you are, not him." Sarah hung up the phone feeling a little lighter, though still with a knot in her chest. Anna's words had sown something inside her, a seed of strength that was beginning to germinate. You decide who you are, not him. That phrase was etched in her mind as she cleared the dishes from the table. That night, after putting the children to bed, Sarah sat in front of the computer, opened the browser, and began searching for information on beauty salons, makeup, and fashion. She felt nervous, but also excited. Every click on the screen was a small step towards something bigger, towards a version of herself she had forgotten existed. In the next room, Mark snored deeply, unaware of the small changes that were beginning to brew in his wife's mind. Sarah closed the computer with a slight smile on her lips. She still felt fear, but for the first time in a long time, she also felt something else: determination. Chapter 2. The Transformation. Sarah woke with a clarity in her mind she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't joy she felt, not even hope. It was something deeper, fiercer: determination. She had spent too long enduring Mark's humiliations, his constant criticisms, and the contempt that dripped from every word he spoke to her. Today, for the first time, she wouldn't cry or beg. Today, Sarah would act. After taking Tom and Lucy to school, Sarah sat down at the dining room table with a notebook and a pen. Her mind worked quickly, full of ideas. For years, she had been the backbone of the house, managing meals, cleaning, finances, and the children, while Mark treated her as if she were invisible. But no more. Today, he was going to finance his own punishment. She remembered Mark's words from the previous night. "Look at this cosmetics store. Do you still think some cream is going to fix the disaster time made of you?" Rage burned in her chest. If he thought she wasn't enough, then she was going to prove him wrong. And if he was so obsessed with money, with his precious appearances and his reputation, then his credit card was going to be the perfect tool to teach him a lesson he would never forget. With an ironic smile on her face, Sarah stood up, grabbed her purse, and left the house. The Manchester Arndale shopping center was livelier than ever that morning. Sarah entered with a firm stride, driven by a single mission: to renew herself. Her first destination was the designer clothing section. She walked among the stores, her heart beating fast, not from fear, but from a mixture of excitement and determination. She was no longer the timid, meek woman who avoided spending on herself to avoid Mark's reproaches. Today, she was a different woman. Today, she wouldn't hold back. She entered one of the most exclusive boutiques and was greeted by a young, impeccably dressed saleswoman who gave her a professional smile. "Welcome, madam. How can I help you?" the young woman asked. Sarah took a deep breath, lifting her chin with a confidence she didn't even know she possessed. "I want a complete wardrobe. Dresses, pants, blouses, everything. And I need every garment to be stunning." The saleswoman blinked, surprised by the certainty in Sarah's voice, but she didn't lose her professionalism. "Of course, come this way. We have some new collections that I think you'll love." Sarah spent the next 2 hours trying on elegant dresses that draped perfectly over her figure, silk blouses that highlighted her skin, and pants that molded her curves. Every time she looked in the mirror, she discovered a little more of herself, as if beneath each new garment, The woman Mark had buried with years of criticism was resurfacing. "This red dress," the saleswoman said, as she helped her adjust a fitted model that highlighted her waist. "It's as if it were made for you." Sarah looked at herself in the mirror. The fabric caressed her body like a second skin, and the vibrant color seemed to scream strength and passion. She smiled with satisfaction. "I'll take it. And I also want that black one, the emerald green, and the shoes that match each one." In the end, Sarah left the store with several luxury bags and a feeling she hadn't remembered experiencing in a long time: pleasure in taking care of herself. But her mission didn't end there. She wasn't going to leave any detail to chance. Her next stop was a shoe boutique. There she walked the aisles with determination, choosing high heels, elegant and sophisticated. Each pair she chose seemed a declaration. I can walk alone. I can step firmly. She chose black patent leather stilettos, red velvet ones, and classic beige ones that she knew would go with everything. The store clerk kept looking at her with admiration as she processed the purchase. "You have very good taste, madam. These shoes are, wow, spectacular." Sarah returned a calm smile. "Thank you. I deserve them." When she left the store with more bags in hand, she decided that the next step was the most important: her final transformation. The beauty salon she arrived at was one of the most prestigious in the city. Sarah had heard of it, but had never dared to enter. Now, as she pushed open the glass door, she did so without hesitation. She was greeted by a stylist with short, colorful hair who welcomed her with enthusiasm. "Welcome, madam. How can we help you?" Sarah sat in front of the mirror and took a deep breath before answering. "I want a change, a total change. I want no one to recognize me when I leave here. I want to be someone new." The stylist smiled, excited by the challenge. "Then you're in the right place. Leave everything in our hands." For the next few hours, Sarah completely surrendered to the process. First, they applied a treatment to revitalize her hair. Then, the stylist took scissors and began to cut with precision, creating a modern and elegant cut that framed her face. When they finished with the haircut, they applied a dye in warm tones that gave her a spectacular shine. Then she went into the hands of a makeup artist who worked patiently, highlighting her eyes with perfect eyeliner and earthy shadows that made her gaze seem more intense. Her lips were painted a deep red that exuded confidence and sensuality. When Sarah saw herself in the mirror, she could barely recognize herself. It was as if she had been reborn. She touched her hair with trembling hands, emotional. "What do you think?" the stylist asked. Sarah smiled, and this time it was not a timid or insecure smile. It was the smile of a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. "I love it. It's perfect." Before leaving, the receptionist handed her the bill with a smile. Sarah slid Mark's credit card without hesitation. "Let him pay for all the damage he did to me," she thought. That afternoon, Sarah arrived home laden with bags. Her children greeted her with hugs and laughter, but Mark was not there. He was at the office preparing for Saturday's event, probably enjoying his time with Emily. Sarah left the bags in the room and looked at herself in the mirror one more time. For the first time in years, she didn't see a shadow. She saw a strong, beautiful woman, ready to reclaim control of her life. Before we continue, we want to know more about you. Where are you watching us from? Leave us a comment with the name of your city or country. We'd love to know and see where these stories reach. Chapter 3. The Grand Entrance. Saturday finally arrived, and with it, Mark's highly anticipated company gala. Sarah had planned every detail of this day as if it were a war strategy. Because, deep down, that's exactly what it felt like. A battle. It wasn't just an elegant night. It was her opportunity to show Mark and herself that she wasn't the defeated woman he had painted with his cruel words. She was much more. At home, the atmosphere was tense. Mark had spent the entire morning between calls and messages with his young secretary, Emily, confirming the final preparations for the event. He had left early to pick her up, leaving Sarah and the children completely ignored. She watched him cross the threshold with his usual air of superiority, not suspecting in the slightest what was about to happen. "See you later, Sarah," Mark said indifferently, as he adjusted his tie in front of the entrance mirror. "By the way, don't expect me to call. I'll be busy all night." Sarah, who was in the kitchen pretending to be distracted with the dishes, barely gave him a glance. But inside, she smiled ironically. "You don't need to call me, Mark. We'll see each other very soon, and you won't be ready for it." Once Mark left, Sarah put her plan into action. She took Tom and Lucy to her friend Anna's house, who offered to look after them. "Ready for the big moment?" Anna asked with a mischievous smile as she took the children's backpacks. Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement in her chest. "More than ready." Her words were firm, but the sparkle in her eyes betrayed a hint of insecurity. "Remember what I told you. Tonight isn't just for him. It's for you. Today, you become the Sarah you always should have been again." Sarah hugged her friend, and after saying goodbye to the children, she headed back to the beauty salon for the final touches. It was the day of her complete transformation. When she arrived at the salon, the stylists greeted her like a queen. As soon as she took off her coat, the employees began to work as a team to perfect every detail. Her hair, now with soft, shiny waves, fell with natural elegance. Her makeup, retouched for the occasion, made her gaze appear that of a determined and imposing woman. Finally, the time came to put on the red dress she had chosen days before. It was fitted, with an elegant cut that accentuated her curves, and a slit in the leg that gave it a daring touch. Combined with the black patent leather stilettos she had bought, Sarah looked as if she had stepped out of a high-fashion magazine. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror and could barely recognize the woman standing in front of her. For the first time in years, she saw what Mark had tried to erase. A strong, radiant woman, full of life and absolutely beautiful. "Madam Sarah, you look spectacular," one of the stylists said, looking at her with admiration. Sarah smiled, but this time it wasn't a timid or insecure smile. It was the smile of a woman who knew exactly what she was worth. "Thank you. Now, I'm ready." The event was held at a luxurious hotel in Manchester city centre. The lights of the ballroom shone like stars, and the walls were elegantly decorated, while the soft music of an orchestra filled the air. The guests, directors, partners, important employees, and their companions walked down the red carpet, dressed in formal attire, ready for a night of prestige. Mark was already there, accompanied by Emily, who wore a short, tight dress that attracted too much attention. Some of Mark's colleagues exchanged discreet glances, clearly uncomfortable with his choice of companion, but he, as always, was too self-absorbed to notice. "Mark, how's Sarah?" a senior partner asked, patting him on the shoulder. Mark tensed a little, but maintained his calm expression. "Oh, she decided to stay home. These events aren't her thing." He let out a chuckle, but he couldn't completely hide his discomfort. He quickly changed the subject, trying to deflect attention. What Mark didn't know was that Sarah was already on her way. When her car arrived in front of the hotel, she took a moment to breathe deeply before stepping out. The door opened, and, with the help of the chauffeur, Sarah slowly descended, revealing her legs covered by the slit of the red dress. Every step she took towards the hotel entrance made people stop and look. "Who is she?" murmured an employee who was helping guests with their coats. I don't know, but she looks like a movie star, another replied. The murmur spread as Sarah crossed the entrance with her head held high, ignoring the comments and surprised glances. When she reached the main ballroom, conversations almost immediately ceased. Everyone's eyes turned towards her, unable to look away. There was something in her posture, in the way she walked, that exuded confidence and power. Mark had his back to her, laughing at something Emily had said, when he noticed that the murmur in the ballroom had subsided. He frowned, confused, and slowly turned around, only to find himself faced with the image of Sarah entering the ballroom as if she owned the place. His eyes widened in disbelief, and his jaw almost dropped to the floor. Was it her? For a second, he couldn't process what he was seeing. Sarah looked more beautiful than he ever remembered. It wasn't just her appearance, it was her attitude, her confidence, the aura of independence that seemed to surround her. She was not the woman he had disparaged for years. She was someone completely different. Emily, beside him, shifted uncomfortably, aware that all the attention she had enjoyed until that moment had completely vanished. No one was looking at her anymore. Everyone was focused on Sarah. What the hell? Mark murmured, still in shock. Sarah walked calmly towards the center of the ballroom, completely ignoring Mark. One of the company's main partners, Mr. Davies, approached her with a charming smile. "Good evening, madam. Do we know each other?" he asked, surprised by her elegance. Sarah smiled confidently, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah, Mark's wife." Mr. Davies's face went from surprise to astonishment, and then to genuine admiration. "Well, Mark has definitely been hiding a treasure. Please, accompany me to the main table. You should be the center of attention tonight." Sarah accepted the invitation with an elegance that left Mark completely paralyzed. As she walked towards the main table with Mr. Davies, all eyes remained on her. The air was charged with tension, and Mark felt his control, his power, slowly crumble before his very eyes. Sarah was seated at the main table of the event, surrounded by the company's most important partners, while Mark remained in his seat, paralyzed by the public humiliation he had just suffered. His wife, whom he had disparaged for years, was now the center of attention. The murmurs of admiration did not stop, and every time someone looked at her, he felt as if a dagger plunged a little deeper into his ego. Emily, who until a few minutes ago had been enjoying all the attention from the men at the event, shifted restlessly in her seat. Her dress, which had previously seemed daring and sophisticated, now looked inappropriate and vulgar next to Sarah's impeccable elegance. She tried to recapture Mark's attention, but he continued to stare at Sarah, furious and confused. "Mark?" a colleague sitting next to him asked, leaning in to whisper. "Who is she? How come you never mentioned your wife? She's impressive." Mark gritted his teeth, but managed to force a false smile. "Oh, she's my wife, Sarah. She just doesn't usually attend these events." He tried to sound casual, but his words came out tense and strained. The colleague looked at him with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. "Well, it seems you should bring her more often. She has more presence than anyone here." Those words were a slap in the face for Mark. His control, his reputation, everything he thought he had under control, seemed to crumble before his eyes. Meanwhile, Sarah continued to converse with Mr. Davies and other partners at the main table. Her soft laughter and confident gaze made her seem completely at ease, as if she had always belonged in that world. Mark, unable to bear the humiliation any longer, abruptly rose from his seat, ignoring Emily, who looked at him with pleading eyes. "Where are you going?" she asked in a whisper. But Mark didn't answer. He walked decisively towards the main table, his face hardened by rage. As he approached, the murmurs in the ballroom increased. Everyone was attentive to the imminent confrontation. "Excuse me," Mark said in a cold, sharp tone, interrupting the conversation Sarah was having with Mr. Davies and the others. He leaned towards her, lowering his voice, but loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "Can we talk privately?" Sarah slowly looked up, her eyes meeting Mark's. There was no fear or submission in her gaze, only a controlled calm that immediately disarmed him. "Of course not, Mark," she replied with a serene smile, taking a sip from her wine glass. "If you have something to tell me, you can do it here. I have nothing to hide." Sarah's words left him breathless for a moment. He had expected her to get up, to follow him obediently as she always did, but instead she had defied him in front of everyone. "I don't think this is the right place for this," Mark insisted, his tone more severe. Sarah carefully placed the glass on the table and clasped her hands in her lap. Then, she looked him directly in the eyes, without blinking. "This? Are you referring to the fact that, for the first time, I'm not hidden at home, while you come here to show off? Or perhaps you're referring to the fact that I decided to show you that I'm not that shadow you invented to feel superior?" Mr. Davies, sitting next to her, raised an eyebrow, clearly interested in what was happening. The others at the table tried to appear busy with their drinks, but it was clear they were listening to every word. Mark clenched his fists and lowered his voice even further. "Sarah, don't make a spectacle. This isn't a game." She smiled, but this time there was an edge to her expression that Mark didn't recognize. "A spectacle? A game?" she repeated, her voice firmer. "Mark, does everything you've put me through for years seem like a game to you? Your criticisms, your humiliations, your contempt?" She paused, letting her words sink in among those present. "Tonight isn't a spectacle, Mark. It's a reminder. For you. So you never forget who I am." Mark felt as if the ground beneath his feet was shaking. For years, he had been the one in control, the one who decided what was important, who was worthwhile, and who wasn't. But now, in front of him, Sarah had regained something he thought he had destroyed forever. Her dignity. The silence at the table was heavy. Mr. Davies, who until now had remained in his seat as a curious observer, decided to intervene. "Sarah, I must tell you that tonight you have impressed us. It's rare to find someone with such grace and character. I hope we can see you at more events like this." Sarah thanked him with a genuine smile. Meanwhile, Mark looked at Mr. Davies with a mixture of jealousy and rage, feeling his power slipping through his fingers. "Well, maybe in the future she'll be a frequent guest," Sarah replied elegantly, knowing perfectly well that her words were a direct dagger to Mark's pride. Emily, who had remained in her seat across the ballroom, watched everything from a distance. She felt invisible, insignificant. Her plan to dazzle that night had completely crumbled. No one was talking about her. No one was looking at her. Everyone was fascinated by Sarah, the woman who shouldn't even be there, according to Mark. Mark tried to take control again. "Mr. Davies, excuse me, but I need to speak with my wife in private. This is a personal matter." Mr. Davies looked at him, raising an eyebrow. "Mark, I think Sarah is perfectly comfortable where she is, and honestly, it seems she has a lot more to say tonight." The soft laughter that was heard at the table was like a slap in the face for Mark. There was no escaping the humiliation. Sarah looked him directly in the eyes, with a tranquility that made him tremble. "Don't worry, Mark. If you need time to compose yourself, I can wait. I'm not in a hurry." Mark clenched his jaw, unable to reply. He knew that any word would only worsen the situation. Sarah had won this battle, and she had done it in front of everyone. As Sarah resumed her conversation with Mr. Davies and the others, Mark slowly retreated, feeling that the night he had planned so carefully had turned into his worst nightmare. Mark walked back to his table like a defeated man, his shoulders tense and his face hardened. Every step he took seemed to weigh tons. He could feel the stares of those present following him, some with surprise, others with contempt, but all clearly aware of the public humiliation he had just suffered. Sarah had turned the tables on him, and he had no idea how to regain control. When he reached his seat, Emily greeted him with an uncomfortable look, clearly aware that something had changed in the atmosphere. Her previously playful and confident attitude had completely vanished. In its place, she now looked insecure and out of place. As she tried to start a conversation, Mark completely ignored her, his eyes fixed on the main table, where Sarah continued to converse and laugh with Mr. Davies and other partners. "Mark?" Emily said, leaning towards him in an attempt to get his attention. "What happened? Why didn't you tell me she was coming?" Mark slowly turned his head towards her, his eyes filled with frustration and contained rage. "I didn't know," he replied through clenched teeth, every word laden with resentment. Emily tried to smile, but her discomfort was evident. "Well, don't worry, no one cares that much," she started to say, but Mark abruptly interrupted her. "Shut up, Emily. You have no idea what you're saying." The harshness in his voice was enough to make her recoil in her seat, hurt and ashamed. Mark looked back at Sarah, who, without even glancing at him, was completely destroying the image of control he had worked so hard to maintain. She didn't need him to shine, and that shattered him. Meanwhile, Sarah was enjoying every moment of her triumph. Every word she exchanged with Mr. Davies and the other partners was a reaffirmation of everything Mark had tried to take from her: her confidence, her self-esteem, her worth. For years, he had made her believe she wasn't enough, that she should stay at home, invisible, while he boasted of his success. But now, the entire ballroom saw her for who she really was: a strong, elegant, and commanding woman. "Sarah, have you considered getting involved in interior design for corporate projects?" Mr. Davies asked, leaning slightly towards her with genuine interest. She looked at him curiously. "Well, I used to work as an interior designer, but I stopped when I got married." The confession came out in a neutral tone, but inside, Sarah felt a small knot in her stomach. Talking about how she gave up her career for Mark still hurt. Mr. Davies nodded thoughtfully. "That's a shame. From what little I've seen tonight, I'm sure you have an incredible eye for detail. If you ever decide to return to that area, I think you'd be very successful. In fact, my company is looking to renovate some offices." He left the sentence hanging, but the implication was clear. Sarah smiled, feeling a spark of excitement in her chest. Was it possible she could actually reclaim the life she had left behind? "Thank you, Mr. Davies. I'll seriously consider it." Her words were sincere, and her smile was genuine. Mr. Davies seemed delighted with her response, and they continued conversing, completely ignoring Mark's burning glances from across the ballroom. As the night progressed, Mark began to notice something even more unsettling. The murmurs in the ballroom were no longer just admiring Sarah. Now, many of the attendees were talking about him. There were expressions of disapproval, judgmental looks. He couldn't hear clearly what they were saying, but he didn't need to. He knew exactly what they were thinking. How could someone like him have treated a woman like her that way? That was the message floating in the air, though no one dared to say it directly. Mark felt sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. Never before had he felt his reputation was in danger. He had always been the successful man, the one everyone respected, the one who had everything under control. But now he was the man who had lost control of his wife, the man who looked small next to the woman he had disparaged. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He abruptly rose from his seat, ignoring Emily, who looked at him with pleading eyes. "Where are you going?" she asked in a whisper. But Mark didn't answer. He walked directly towards the main table, where Sarah continued to shine. "You're having fun, Sarah," Mark said in an acidic tone, interrupting the conversation. His face was tense, and his voice, though low, had a dangerous edge. Sarah looked up calmly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "Indeed, Mark, I'm having a lot of fun. Thanks for asking." Her tone was sweet, almost mocking, enough to make him seethe inside. "Can we talk now?" Mark insisted, clearly annoyed by her indifference. Mr. Davies, who was sitting next to Sarah, intervened before she could respond. "Mark, with all due respect, I think Sarah is enjoying the night. Perhaps you could wait until it's over." His tone was polite, but left no room for discussion. Mark looked at him with narrowed eyes, feeling a direct blow to his ego. Since when did Mr. Davies, his partner, treat him as if he were a subordinate? "This is a personal matter," Mark said, trying to regain some authority. Sarah, who had been observing in silence, finally spoke. "Mark, I think Mr. Davies is right. I don't think this is the time or place." Then, she shot him a look that froze him in his tracks. "Besides, I have nothing more to say to you, for now." The way she emphasized "for now" made it clear that she was in complete control. Mark clenched his fists and jaw, completely disarmed. He couldn't win this fight. Not here. Not now. Sarah returned her attention to Mr. Davies, completely ignoring Mark, who, defeated, had to return to his table under everyone's curious gaze. When Mark reached his seat, Emily tried to talk to him, but he raised a hand to silence her. He was angry, humiliated, but above all, terrified. Sarah was no longer the submissive woman he had known. Now she was an unstoppable force, and he had no idea how to stop her. Mark was at his limit. He had never experienced such a devastating blow to his ego and his control. Sarah, the woman he had believed he had subdued for years, had not only escaped his dominion, but now shone brighter than ever in front of his colleagues and partners. And worse, she was making him look weak, insignificant, ridiculous. Sitting at his table, with his jaw clenched and his fists closed, Mark tried to think of a way to regain control, but nothing came to mind. Everything he had once used against Sarah, his cruel words, his criticisms, his emotional manipulations, seemed useless now. She was untouchable. Emily, beside him, still tried to salvage her night. She kept talking, making insipid comments about the guests and the event decor, but Mark could no longer even look at her. Everything she represented, her youth, her superficial appearance, the supposed status he gained by bringing her as his companion, now seemed empty and meaningless. Compared to Sarah, Emily looked childish, out of place, irrelevant. Finally, unable to bear the feeling of defeat, Mark rose again. This time, he wouldn't allow Sarah to make him look ridiculous. He would confront her, even if it was in the middle of the ballroom, even if everyone present was a witness. Sarah was enjoying the conversation with Mr. Davies and other partners when she felt Mark's presence approaching again. This time she didn't ignore him. She looked him directly in the eyes, with a calm but defiant expression, as he approached the table. Her posture showed no fear, only absolute control. "Sarah," Mark said, his tone dry and cutting. "We need to talk, now." Mr. Davies raised an eyebrow, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "Mark, I think we already discussed this a moment ago. Sarah is busy." "Mr. Davies, this has nothing to do with you." Mark looked at him sternly, but Mr. Davies didn't back down. Sarah intervened before the situation escalated. "It's okay, Mr. Davies." She stood up calmly, holding her wine glass in her hand. "If Mark wants to talk, I can listen to what he has to say." Mark exhaled forcefully, clearly frustrated, but satisfied that he had finally gotten what he wanted. However, Before he could head to a private area, Sarah added, "It's fine here. There's nothing Mark can say that can't be heard by everyone else." Her tone was firm, and her gaze challenged him directly. If he wanted a confrontation, she would give it to him, but on her terms. The partners at the table exchanged uncomfortable glances. No one wanted to intervene, but no one moved either. Everyone was clearly interested in what was about to happen. Mark, trapped in his own arrogance, had no choice but to accept the condition. "Do you really want to do this here?" he asked through clenched teeth, trying to intimidate her. Sarah smiled coldly. "You were the one who insisted on talking, Mark. I'm listening. Go ahead." Mark looked around, aware that all eyes in the ballroom were on them. He had no escape. "All right." His voice was tense. "What the hell are you trying to do, Sarah? Why did you come here like this to ruin my night? Is this some kind of childish revenge?" Sarah took a sip of her wine before answering, as if Mark's words didn't affect her at all. "Ruin your night?" she repeated, her tone loaded with irony. "No, Mark. I didn't come here for you. I came here for me, because I'm tired of hiding, of being treated as if I didn't exist. Tonight, I wanted to remind you and remind myself who I really am." Mark clenched his fists, furious. He was losing control of the conversation, and he knew it. "And you think this makes you look good?" he spat, his voice rising slightly in volume. "Do you think coming here dressed like that, acting as if you own the place, makes you important? Sarah, you're making a fool of yourself." A heavy silence filled the air. Mark's words had been brutal, and some of those at the table looked at him with disapproval. But Sarah didn't seem affected. On the contrary, she maintained her upright posture, her face impassive. "Ridiculous?" she repeated calmly. "Is that what you think, Mark? Well, I'm not surprised. After all, you've always been an expert at humiliating me, haven't you?" Her voice wasn't loud, but it was charged with a force that cut like a knife. "For years you've belittled me. You've insulted me. You've made me feel worthless. But tonight, Mark, I'm not going to let you continue to have that power over me." Sarah's words resonated through the ballroom like thunder. Some guests stopped talking completely, trying to listen better. Mark, for the first time, seemed disarmed. His eyes moved quickly, looking for a way to respond, but he found none. "You've always been afraid of someone discovering who you really are, Mark." Sarah took a step towards him, her voice lower, but even sharper. "A man who needs to trample others to feel powerful. But tonight, everyone is seeing the truth. Everyone is seeing who you really are." Mark felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. He had never been confronted this way, much less in public. He tried to regain control of the situation, but his words wouldn't come out. Sarah had completely exposed him, and there was nothing he could say to save himself. Finally, Sarah took a last sip of her wine and placed the glass on the table. Then she looked at him with a calm smile. "Thank you for inviting me to this gala, Mark. It's been a very revealing night." With those words, she turned and returned to her place at the table, leaving Mark standing, humiliated and defeated, in front of everyone. As Sarah resumed her conversation with Mr. Davies and the others, Mark realized he couldn't stay there. He had lost. Without a word, he turned and left the ballroom, leaving Emily alone, sitting at the table, embarrassed and confused. That night, as laughter and conversations continued at the event, Sarah knew she had reclaimed something Mark had tried to destroy for years: her dignity, her power, and her freedom. Chapter 4. The Path to Freedom. Sarah woke the next day in the guest room of Anna's house. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, and the soft murmurs of her children playing in the living room brought a smile to her face. She had spent a peaceful night, free from tension, free from Mark. For the first time in years, she felt light, as if a weight she had carried on her shoulders for too long had finally vanished. Sitting on the bed, Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the events of the previous night. Her triumphant entry into the event, Mark's reaction, the words she had spoken in front of everyone. She had never thought she would be able to confront him in that way, but she had done it, and she had won. Now, with a clear mind, she knew that this was not just a fleeting victory. It was the beginning of something bigger, something definitive. She got up, washed her face, and looked in the mirror. The woman she saw reflected was different. Her hair, still perfectly styled, framed a face full of determination. There was no trace of the insecurity she used to see in her eyes. Now, there was fire. There was determination. There was a woman who knew what she was worth. Anna was waiting for her in the kitchen, with a hot cup of coffee and her usual warm smile. "And how do you feel after your big night?" Anna asked as she poured another cup for Sarah. Sarah sat at the table and took the cup in her hands, inhaling the comforting aroma. "I feel free," she replied with a calm smile. "And ready." Anna raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" Sarah took a sip of coffee before replying, her voice firm. "Ready to end this. I'm going to file for divorce from Mark." Anna put the cup on the table with a soft thud, surprised. "Are you sure?" "More than ever," Sarah replied without hesitation. "Last night wasn't just a way to confront him. It was a definitive end. Mark has humiliated me for years, Anna. He's treated me as if I was worthless, as if I was an object he could use and discard whenever he wanted. But no more. I'm no longer that woman." Anna looked at her in silence for a moment, assimilating her words. Then, a proud smile appeared on her face. "That's the Sarah I always knew was there." Sarah took her hand and squeezed it gratefully. "Thank you for everything, Anna. For taking care of me, for taking care of the children, for reminding me who I am. I couldn't have gotten here without you. Don't thank me. Just make sure you never lose yourself again." Sarah nodded. There was no turning back. Later that same day, Sarah returned to her house with the children. As she drove, her mind was calm. She knew that what she was about to do would be difficult, that she would face resistance from Mark, but she also knew that she was prepared. For the first time in years, she felt no fear. When she arrived, the children ran to their rooms, laughing and playing, while Sarah headed to the living room, where Mark was sitting on the sofa with his phone in his hand. He looked tired, with a frown on his face, as if he still hadn't gotten over the events of the previous night. Seeing her enter, he looked up. "You finally decided to show up," he said with sarcasm, placing his phone on the table. "Did you have fun staying at your friend's house while I had to deal with the mess you caused last night?" Sarah looked at him calmly, not reacting to his tone. "Mark, we need to talk." He watched her for a moment, confused by her calm yet firm demeanor. "Talk about what?" Sarah sat across from him, keeping her back straight and her chin held high. "I'm going to file for divorce." The words fell like a bomb. Mark stared at her, as if he hadn't understood what he had just heard. "What did you say?" he asked, narrowing his eyes. "What you heard. I want a divorce. This is over, Mark." He let out a bitter laugh, clearly incredulous. "Are you crazy? Sarah, you can't be serious. After all these years, after everything I've done for you, you want to throw it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away, Mark. You threw it away when you decided to humiliate me, when you treated me as if I was worthless, when you put your ego and your reputation above your family. This is over because I'm done enduring it." Mark got up from the sofa, pacing back and forth, clearly nervous. "Sarah, listen to me. You're overreacting. Last night was a misunderstanding. I was upset, okay? But it doesn't mean anything. I was just—" He stopped, searching for the right words, but couldn't find them. Sarah interrupted him, raising a hand. "Don't try to justify yourself, Mark. I'm not here to listen to your excuses. I'm here to tell you that this is going to be resolved, but not your way, like always. This is going to be resolved legally, in court." Mark looked at her, now completely serious. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I know my rights, and I know I'm entitled to half of everything you own. The house, the money, everything. I don't care how much you try to fight it, Mark. I'm not backing down. You're never going to use me as a doormat again. I'm never going to accept your humiliations again." Mark clenched his fists, trying to control his anger. "So now you're a legal expert, Sarah. Where did this new version of you come from?" Sarah stood up, looking him directly in the eyes. "It came from the pain you caused me. It came from the nights I spent crying because of the things you said to me. It came from the years I spent believing I wasn't enough. And now, Mark, that woman you left broken is standing, and I assure you, she won't fall again." Mark stared at her, trying to intimidate her, but there was nothing he could do. Sarah was no longer the same. "This is going to be resolved in court," she repeated. "And I don't care how long it takes. I'll make sure I receive everything I'm entitled to. And you're going to learn that you can't treat people the way you treated me." With that said, Sarah turned and walked to her room, leaving Mark alone in the living room, unable to process what had just happened. She closed the door behind her, breathing deeply. She had reclaimed her power, and she would never lose it again. Mark remained seated in the living room for hours, paralyzed by Sarah's words. Every phrase resonated in his mind like an endless echo. "You're never going to accept your humiliations again. This is going to be resolved legally. You're going to learn that you can't treat people the way you treated me." For the first time in his life, Mark didn't know how to react. He had always been in control. He had always been the one who dictated the rules, but now everything had slipped out of his hands. He abruptly stood up, furious. He wasn't going to let Sarah defy him like that. He went to his home office. He slammed the door shut and started making calls. First, he called a lawyer friend, but the response he received was not what he expected. "Mark, if Sarah decides to go the legal route, you're in trouble. She's entitled to half of everything you own, especially if you've been using family resources for personal gain." Mark was silent. His mind began to race, trying to find a way out. But everything the lawyer said confirmed that his position was not as solid as he thought. Sarah had confronted him not only with confidence, but also with knowledge of her rights. She wasn't playing. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in bed, while Sarah slept peacefully on her side of the room, as calmly as he had never seen her. That serenity infuriated him. How could she be so self-assured? How could she act as if she had already won? But deep down, he knew the answer, because she already had. The next morning, Sarah woke up early, as always. But this time, her routine was different. There was something different about her energy. Instead of feeling the exhaustion that usually accompanied her every day, she felt strong, determined. She prepared breakfast for her children and helped them get ready for school, while Mark remained in his office, avoiding crossing paths with her. When the children left, Sarah sat in the living room with a folder in her hand. It was the compilation of all the information she had been gathering over the past few days: bank statements, legal documents, financial records. She had taken control, and every page in that folder was proof that she was ready to fight. Mark finally came out of his office, and when he saw Sarah sitting there, with the folder on the table, his chest tightened. He knew the confrontation was inevitable. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to the folder with a brusque gesture. Sarah looked at him without fear. "It's everything I need for the divorce." Mark frowned, his frustration growing. Are you really going through with this? Don't you realize what you're doing? Sarah crossed her legs and looked at him calmly. Of course I know what I'm doing. I'm reclaiming my life, and I'll do it with or without your cooperation. Mark scoffed, trying to regain some control. And what will you gain from all this? Money? Revenge? Sarah, do you really think you can come out of this better than you already are? She looked at him intently, her eyes filled with a determination Mark didn't recognize. It's not about money or revenge, Mark. It's about respect. It's about not allowing anyone to ever treat me the way you did. This isn't to punish you. It's to free myself from you. Mark felt those words hit him like a punch to the stomach. As much as he wanted to fight, as much as he wanted to scream, he knew he no longer had the same power over her. Sarah had stripped him of all the control he once had. And what about the children? He finally asked, looking for another way to manipulate her. Are you going to destroy their lives too? Sarah shook her head, maintaining her composure. The only thing I'm going to destroy is the example you were setting for them. I don't want my children to grow up believing it's normal for a woman to accept being humiliated, or that a man has the right to control others' lives. They'll be fine, Mark, because now they have a mother who knows what she's worth. Mark fell silent. For the first time, he had nothing to say. Over the next few days, Sarah began to take concrete steps. She consulted a lawyer who explained every detail of her case and confirmed that she had every chance of winning. She also visited a therapist, something she had put off for a long time, to work through all the emotional damage Mark had caused her. Every step she took was like another piece in the puzzle of her new life. Sarah was not just seeking legal justice, she was rebuilding herself from scratch, a stronger, more self-assured version. Meanwhile, Mark consumed himself in his own frustration. Everything in the house reminded him that he had lost control. Every time he saw Sarah, with her firm posture and serene gaze, he felt a mixture of rage and fear. He knew he couldn't stop her, but he also couldn't accept his defeat. He tried to confront her once more, with a more conciliatory tone this time, hoping to manipulate her in another way. Sarah, can't we fix this between us? We don't need to involve lawyers or lawsuits. We can find a more discreet solution. Sarah looked him directly in the eyes, without a trace of doubt. A discreet solution, she repeated. Like keeping everything hidden? Like you've always wanted? No, Mark, not anymore. What we're doing is public, because I have nothing to hide, and neither should you. Mark clenched his teeth, his frustration growing again. What did you gain from all this, Sarah? He finally asked, almost pleading. She stood up from the table, picked up the folder with her documents, and looked at him one last time before leaving the living room. I gained something you never understood, Mark. I gained my freedom. As Sarah walked to her room, Mark was left alone, facing the harsh reality. He had lost Sarah forever, and this time there was nothing he could do to get her back. Through Sarah's story, there's something all women should remember. Your worth is defined by no one but yourself. Don't let cruel words, humiliations, or criticisms extinguish your light. Because within you is a strength that can lift you even in the darkest moments. Being a homemaker, a mother, or any role you choose in life doesn't make you less. You are just as valuable, just as capable, and worthy of respect. No one has the right to make you feel small, neither by your appearance, nor by the decisions you make to care for your family, nor by any aspect of your life. Love and acceptance begin with yourself. Toxic relationships and humiliations, whether in private or public, should not be normalized or tolerated. If someone tries to belittle you or make you feel that you are not enough, remember this. You don't need anyone to make you doubt your power. You have the right to be treated with respect, dignity, and love. And if anyone ever tries to trample on you, Be certain that you can rise, because within you is a strength that cannot be destroyed. You are not alone. Seek support. Inform yourself about your rights. Surround yourself with people who encourage and value you. Never settle for less than you deserve. Like Sarah, you can take control of your life, reclaim your power, and rediscover the incredible woman you have always been. You are powerful. You are valuable. You are enough. Never forget it. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to explore more content on our channel. We have many more exciting and thought-provoking stories that, like this one, aim to inspire you and show you that there is always hope. Click on the next video and join us for another narrative that will surely captivate you from the very first moment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your comment, and share this video with those you think might need it. Thank you for being part of this community. We'll see you in the next video.